Hello, everyone. Let's remind ourselves about the source for this whole chapter about treating animals on Shabbat. And in the end of Parshat Mishpatim, it says, Sheshet yamim ta'aseh ma'asecha, that you should do your work for 6 days. And we're going to learn that the word ta'aseh is actually very important. The nekudot, how to pronounce it as opposed to te'aseh. V'yom hashvi'i tishbot, and on the seventh day you shall rest. In order for your ox and donkey to rest, and also your maidservant and the sojourner or the other in your land. Um, so the first time that I remember talking about caring for animals in the Torah is in Parshat Vayishlach, that when Jacob came back to Eretz Israel, it says that he went to Sukkot, and that's why the name of the place was Sukkot, because he built himself a home, and Miknehu for his cattle and livestock. He made Sukkot, these huts that they can be protected from the elements, and that was apparently not done ever before in history, or if it was not recorded in the Torah. So let's go to two laws about causing pain for animals. So first of all, we have also in Parshat Vayim Shema, we have a remez that you're supposed to first feed your animals before you eat yourself. That's all week long. But I think on Shabbos it is more applicable because we wake up late and we go to shul, and we might, be delayed, and so it's important to remember that that is the law. So an animal may be led to graze in a grassy area, and it does not constitute kotzer, since the animal is eating for its own sake. We are not commanded to make sure that animals keep Shabbat, only that they do not do labor for our benefit. And so that's why it's ta'aseh melacha, and he'll clarify more. One may provide food and water to animals in his possession that depend on him, like cows, chickens, and cats, and other pets. Food and water may also be provided to animals belonging to another Jew. And really, what he wanted to say here is instead of may provide, has to provide, because, like I said, it is the law of the Torah to take care of your animals. However, one may not feed or water sufficient animals like bees and doves. Even though feeding them is not a melacha, the sages prohibited it because it is seen as requiring excessive effort. Because since they can do it on their own, we don't need to help them. And one may put food out for hungry animals like stray dogs and cats. As we know, God shows mercy to all his creatures, as it is written, his mercy is upon all his works. Rachamav al kol ma'asav. It is proper to emulate, and it is proper to emulate Hashem's ways, what we call imitatio Dei. Animals are muktzeh, therefore they may not be picked up, nor may their limbs be lifted up. However, when it is necessary for their well-being, for example, in order to get them to their food, um, like to give them a little nudge, one may take hold of them and move their limbs to prevent them from suffering, what's called tsar ba'al chaim, literally causing pain for living beings, as long as one does not lift them off the ground completely, um, because again, it's a tirchaya tira, excessive effort. If animals have difficulty eating unless the food is placed directly in their mouths, one may feed them in this way as long as he does not force feed them. Force feeding refers to shoving the food so far down their throats that they are unable to spit it up. This requires excessive effort, and it's also forbidden because it's causing them pain. There is a kind of animal, I'm sure that there's more than one, but the example he gives is about geese, and that they fatten them, which may be wrong, but if you do have geese in a geese farm or such a thing, one may ask a non-Jew to feed geese that have been force-fed for so long that they are unable to eat otherwise, and would suffer hunger and pain if they were not fed on Shabbat. In such a case, one may ask a non-Jew to feed them one time on Shabbat. If there's a non-Jew available, if there is no non-Jew available, the poskim disagree whether a Jew may feed them to minimize their suffering. It is better not to force feed geese at all, as doing so causes them pain and entails multiple prohibitions. So in the Torah, there's a couple of examples that our rabbis learned in Masechet Bava Metzia and Shabbat that refer to Tzar Ba'al Chaim. The first one is Lo Tachsom Shor B'Yedei Shor, that you're not allowed to muzzle a bull when it is plowing or at the threshing floor, because you're preventing them from eating. Also, that you're not allowed to put an ox and a donkey together. The Sefer HaChinuch says that besides the fact that the problem of kilayim, of inbreeding or crossbreeding, there's also the problem that the donkey is much weaker than the ox, and so it would suffer more doing the work in plowing, and it will be harder for it and cause it unnecessary pain. And so also, if you have a kid petting zoo on Shabbat, you are allowed to feed the animals because the food is already there. But of course, we're not allowed to cut the grass on Shabbat for that purpose. So one may cut up food not connected to the ground for animals if they would not be able to readily eat it otherwise. This includes cutting up pumpkins that are fed to animals and tough carcasses that are fed to dogs and that they have trouble eating. However, one may not cut up any food for them that they could eat by themselves. Even if cutting makes it easier for them to eat, it is excessive effort and thus forbidden on Shabbat. And so let's just go into idea of milking on Shabbat, because milking is also permitted because of Tzar Ba'al Chaim, generally speaking. So Torah law forbids milking a cow or any other animal on Shabbat, as doing so separates the milk from the cow's body and constitutes mefarek, todah of dash, like a threshing floor, which we just mentioned. Just as one may not separate grain from its husk, so too one may not separate milk from its source. So why did I say that milking a cow or other animals on Shabbat is permissible? Because of Tzar Ba'al Chaim. So the rabbis who said that this is forbidden according to Torah law are the ones who overrode it, I think that's how you say it, by allowing us to do it in a way that will cause them to be more comfortable and not suffer, but also not to give us the milk that is produced. So the problem is that if a dairy cow, which produces great quantities of milk, is not milked on Shabbat, it suffers greatly. Therefore, the sages permitted asking a non-Jew to milk a cow on Shabbat, even though generally speaking it is rabbinically prohibited to ask a non-Jew to do melacha for us on Shabbat. Here they suspended the prohibition in order to avoid Tzar Ba'al Chaim. So even though it's not very clear that Tzar Ba'al Chaim is from the Torah, because they just said that this was a tolada of dash, which means that it's not directly from the Torah, then that's why they said it's allowed. It is true that the milk is muktzah on Shabbat. However, after Shabbat, a Jew may drink it or sell it. In Israel today, the tnuva has chalav mehadrin, which means that it wasn't milked on Shabbat. Well, not only tnuva, but all the different companies that produce milk differentiate between mehadrin and not mehadrin. However, if there is no non-Jew available, a Jew may milk the cow as long as the milk goes to waste. For example, it may be milked directly onto the ground or into a bucket that contains an agent that will ruin the milk. And so, again, that's going back to what we said before about ta'aseh melacha. We aren't allowed to do a creative labor on Shabbat that benefits us, but this is benefiting the animal, and we're not going to enjoy it. And last but not least, because there are so many religious kibbutzim, so nowadays dairy farming has been modernized and milking is automated. A cup is placed on a teat and connected to a pump via a tube. If there is no non-Jew available, one may ask them to turn on the machine and place the cups. If there is a non-Jew available, one may ask them to put the cups on the cow on Shabbat, because otherwise the cows would suffer. And if no non-Jew is available, common practice is for a Jew to use a timer or a delay mechanism that is set before Shabbat to turn on the machine. On Shabbat, before the machine turns on, the cups are attached to the cow's teats, and then the machine turns on and automatically pumps out the milk. Thus, the Jew has not performed any melacha directly, what's called grama, which means I caused something in delay. We talked about the Shabbat pen and other things like that. For when they attached the cups, the machine was not on, even though placing the cups on the teats causes a melacha to take place. This is not prohibited by Torah law. The Torah only forbids direct action, as it states, you shall not do any melacha ta'aseh, as opposed to te'aseh. It's not passive that labor, creative labor is being done, but rather you are not allowed to do directly a melacha, and that's why this amazing idea with grama, especially in makom tsar, in a place where there's suffering for the animals, is permitted and encouraged. And we will stop here.